Okay, so the last part of changing the subject is if the subject appears more than once. And I've said that this is challenging because this is something that would appear towards the end of the paper. This is something that is a much trickier kind of skill, and it also overlaps with a lot of things in A-level as well. So I'm going to write some steps for this because I think, unlike the previous parts where you're just solving them and you're rearranging them, this one there's a good strategy of what you want to do. So as you can see, the subject is appearing more than once. We've got the X in two different places here. So if I don't write this down if you're doing this at home, but if you try to make X the subject by being like, okay, great, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the Y to the other side, and then I'm going to divide by A. Well, we don't have X as the subject because we only want it to appear once, and it's appearing over here as well. It's appearing twice. And the whole version of, the whole meaning of what it means to make something the subject is that you only want it once. You just want X equals. So that is not going to work. So the first step that you're going to take is you are going to collect the subject terms on one side. And you're going to put the non-subject terms on the other side. Okay, maybe I'll actually add that in. And we're going to collect the subject terms on one side and the rest on the other side. So let's do that, okay? Now, I want this one, which is my other term. It's got nothing to do with X. I don't want it to be negative. I want it to be positive. So I'm going to send that one to the other side, which will give me that it's equal to Y. Now at the same time, I want this bx to be with its ax because those are the subject terms. Those are the ones that are x. Remember, we're trying to make x the subject here. So that's going to be ax minus bx. So the bx went that way, and the reason the bx went that way is because it needed to be with the ax, and the minus y went to the other side because it is one of the others. It's the rest that goes to the other side. Now, I've got two x's and I want there just to be one x. So the way that we do that is we factorize with the subject. So the subject is x. So I'm going to factorize and I'm going to take out x as a common factor. So that is going to be x brackets a minus b equals y. There is that x. And now we've got x just by itself. And then the last thing you do is you just complete as usual. Now you complete it as usual. And it's usual because we've only got one variable. So to get rid of this a minus b that we have here, I'm not going to expand the brackets, that won't work. I'm going to just divide by this whole bracket, which is a minus b. So x equals y over a minus b. If you expanded the brackets, you come back into that issue of there being two x values there. And this is the final answer for x as the subject. So it's tricky. I get that this is challenging. I'm going to do two examples that are quite demanding, and then you've got two as your turn, and I'm going to do a separate video for a very challenging final example. Well, I think it's more challenging. So I'm going to try and make x the subject for this one. The first thing was to get all of the subject terms on one side and then the others on the other side. Well, that's already where it should be. So I'm just going to take this x and put it to the other side so that we get 2ax minus x equals b. And I've deliberately used some capital letters here just to show you that you might come across it with different kinds of variables. So that was the first thing, to collect the subject terms on one side and the rest on the other side. Now I'm going to factorize with the subject, and then I'll complete as usual. So I'm going to take the subject, which is x, I'm going to take it out of the brackets, which would leave me with a 2a subtract 1, and that is equal to b. At this stage here, I've got x by itself, so now I can just get rid of the 2a minus 1 by doing b divided by 2a minus 1, and there is my final answer with x as the subject. Now this one is more demanding because x is appearing in two places and it's a fraction. So again, I always want to avoid fractions by multiplying up by this x minus a. So I'm going to multiply up by x minus a, and that's going to be equal to x plus a. And then I'm going to expand the brackets because I can't even get this x out of this to collect them until I have expanded these brackets. So I get px minus pa. Now I usually do alphabetical order, so I'm actually going to write that as ap. And that's equal to x plus a. So x was appearing twice, it's still twice, and it's still twice, but now because I've got them as individual terms rather than as two things being multiplied, this bracket by p, I can collect them onto the side that I want. Now I could either collect them onto the right hand side or the left hand side. If I wanted to put them onto the right hand side, I would then have to get rid of this plus a, and I would have minus ap minus a, and we don't really like negatives. So I'm going to put the x terms on the left. So I'm going to have px minus x. That x has gone over here, which means that minus ap has to go to the other side, so that I get a plus ap. So that took a long time to get to this bit, but we've now got the x terms on one side by themselves and not in a fraction. So we're going to do the next step, which is to factorize. So that is going to be p minus 1 equals a plus ap. So all that's left is to divide by p minus 1, which is a plus ap over p minus 1. Now you might like to factorize that numerator because you can see that a is in common. So it is a brackets 1 plus p over p minus 1. This one is perfectly fine though, but if you wanted to just check, you could obviously write it in that version like this, and you could also write that with the p plus 1 to kind of give you some symmetry with that p minus 1. So just two questions because these are tricky, but then there's also some that I'm going to link in the description. So make y the subject this time of these equations. Okay, so we have a y here and a y here. I'm this time, because this is negative, I want this to be positive. If I subtracted that, I would have minus b minus a, and I don't really like equations that are like that. They just don't look as good. I might show you what happens if I do it that way. So instead, I'm going to put the minus b over to this side, and I'm going to do the 2xy over to that side. When the minus b comes over, it becomes a plus b, and I'm going to have 3y minus 2xy. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to factorize so that I keep the a plus b. I'll take the y out as a factor, which is 3 minus 2x. Then all I need to do is divide by 3 minus 2x. So I'm going to get that y equals a plus b divided by 3 minus 2x. Now, if at the beginning you sent them in the other direction, what you would have ended up with, let's just quickly draw that a little bit neater. What you would have ended up with, if I said I have 2xy minus 3y, that would be equal to minus b minus a. If I factorize the y, I would get 2x minus 3 equals minus b minus a. So y is equal to minus b minus a over 2x minus 3. Are these things equivalent? Is this and this equivalent? You might like to have a little think and write down in the comments if you think that they are equivalent, or if you know that they are equivalent because they are, why are they equivalent to each other? That's something to have a think about, but you could do it in this way, but it doesn't look nice to have these two negatives, so I prefer this one that's at the top. Okay, we're going to make y the subject of this one. There's a capital V and there's also a t. So we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to multiply up by the y minus t, so that's v brackets y minus t equals 3y plus 2. I shall expand the bracket, so that's vy minus vt equals 3y plus 2. I guess I should do the t before the v because of the alphabet, but we're going to just leave it. So I'm going to put the 3y onto the left-hand side, so that would be that going sent that way and the vt getting sent that way. So that's vy minus 3y equals 2 plus vt, or you could say vt plus 2. Now I'll factorize the y, so it is v minus 3 equals 2 plus vt. And now that we've got to this stage, all those two y's that we had, finally we've gone from having two y's to just having one y, so it's like a normal question at this stage. And we can just do the 2 plus vt divided by v minus 3. And as I said before, the numerator could be vt plus 2. It's obviously the same thing, whichever way around that you add that. So in the last video, I'm going to do one final very challenging example. Found this video helpful? Then why not drop it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd like the next video in the playlist, you can click here to be taken straight to it. And as always, wishing you the very best for all your studies.